I wanted to hold off on making this video until I had a more established channel, but I'm starting to come across a significantly larger amount of Fogborns as of late, so I want to make this video so I can at least put my opinion out there, as well as tell people how truly overpowered this monster is, while also kind of telling them how to play him well. Overpowered is not a word I personally like to throw around all that much as other YouTubers, but Fogborn, in my opinion, is absolutely a monster and you can make a case for being overpowered. Let's just dive right into it. Fogborn stats are 25 sprint speed, 100 stamina, and 30 damage per attack with an average attack cooldown and a very long-reaching hitbox. These are incredible stats, and the only real bad part is Fogborn has an incredibly high stamina drain rate. 30 damage allows him to bone break a survivor in only 3 hits, as well as kill someone using runner in only 3 hits. His sprint speed is also quite impressive, being the only monster with 25, and as such, he's actually a monster that's faster than MX. Stats by themselves aren't everything though. Abilities are where a monster really comes into their own. Let's talk about his weaker ability first, being Foggy Stare.
The thing in the fridge is definitely not human meat.
Yes, I just called Foggy Stare the weaker of his 2 abilities, which may be surprising to some people. I'm very confident in this opinion, however, and hopefully I can make you see my perspective here. Upon use, Fogborn will whistle, and he'll stand still for a few seconds. If a survivor has Fogborn on their screen at any point during this time, Fogborn gets a tremendous amount of buffs, which I'll call the Rage State. The Rage State lasts for 9 seconds, and is easily the scariest part of Fogborn on the surface. There's a lot to cover here, so stick with me. Firstly, Fogborn highlights a survivor that triggers the Rage State for 9 seconds. Every other survivor gets highlighted black and is immune to damage dealt by Fogborn for 3.5 seconds. You have a 5.5 second window to damage these other survivors that didn't activate it, but I'd advise against doing that, as it's just rude to do that and people will hate you for it. Next, Fogborn gets a notable speed increase. Nowhere in the game does it specify how fast he gets, but I have to imagine it's 28 sprint speed, making him around the speed of PCX and Melodicus. He also gets a massive reduction to his stamina drain rate while sprinting, allowing him to get a lot more out of his 100 stamina while also getting his stamina fully restored upon activation. Finally, his sprinting animation, as well as his attack animation while sprinting, changes alongside an increase in attack speed ever so slightly. If Fogborn doesn't get anyone to activate his Rage State, he just gets 40 stamina, which is whatever. Now, any Seasoned Pillar Chase 2 players know the solution to this is to simply not look at Fogborn. The most common way to do this is to stare at the floor or ceiling, completely minimizing the chances of seeing Fogborn. But you have to ask yourself, that's a little extreme, right? It's also a little necessary. Foggy Stare, as far as I can tell, has an unlimited activation radius. A lot of the times when you activate it, survivors won't actually be able to see you in the first place. This is due to the fact that survivors have very limited scopes of vision. Their camera doesn't even need to be centered on you either. As long as Fogborn's upper body can draw a line to the camera, he can be 500 miles away and on the bottom right of their screen. This can actually cause some issues for Fogborn as well. There will be a few cases where you want to Foggy Stare someone nearby, but it triggers on someone across the map. This is very rare, but it usually isn't that much of an issue because, as mentioned, you could use it to kill a different survivor that didn't activate it. As such, I personally deem the threat of Foggy Stare to be where the real strength of this ability comes from. Good survivors are naturally going to be less aware of their surroundings as they employ the counterplay to it, making them path worse, do their tasks slower, all that stuff. Less experienced survivors won't know about Foggy Stare, and if they do, they might underestimate how easy it is for Fogborn to activate it if they're not being careful. As again, most people assume they actually will need to see Fogborn for it to activate. There is a bit more to say about Foggy Stare, but first we need to broaden our scope of Fogborn to talk about that. Let's move on to his next ability, being his first one, Thunder Warp. Thunder Warp is Fogborn's strongest ability. All it does is make him invisible, very fast, and allow him to put himself basically wherever he wants. It also highlights every survivor on the map for half a second or so at the start of the ability. Survivors will know when you're hovering around nearby them invisible as they can hear the faint sounds of thunder, but in most cases that just means they know they're about to die. It also has a cooldown of 13 seconds and you can't regenerate stamina while cloaked. Upon exiting Thunder Warp, Fogborn has a 1.25 second delay on any action. This is just to give survivors reaction time, and so Fogborn can instantly Foggy Stare or start attacking or something. So what makes this ability so strong? Well, this ability naturally shuts down any camping strategies, as Fogborn can instantly place himself on top of a survivor that's camping at the long end of a hall and start the chase from there. More than that, when it comes to Fogborn's stamina, he has enough with a full tank of stamina to hit a survivor 3 times out of a Thunder Warp. That's a bone break, which is basically a kill. Not to be a broken record, but Fogborn has a very long-reaching attack hitbox, as well as being 2 points faster than the normal survivor. As long as he has stamina, he can gain on a survivor and very easily maintain his attack range. Even being just a little late on reacting to Thunder Warp is a hit or two. We also need to talk about the elephant in the room with this ability. Thunderwarp gets significantly more powerful with server delay. I talk about it a lot more in my hitbox video, which you can check out if you'd like. What's relevant to this video is due to the fact how Roblox handles server delay, just a little bit of lag can be enough to make that 1.25 delay on Thunderwarp even shorter. This also just hurts your reaction time, as you can properly react to Thunderwarp and get a head start on him, but it doesn't really matter as your hurtbox is trailing so far behind you. This ability can also be used to mind game survivors pretty hard. You could just float around people, freaking them out on when and where you're going to appear, observe their habits, and make them spend their stamina. Most survivors will hear thunder and know you're close, but that extra bit of stress before the chase could definitely help you out. Overall, Thunderwarp by itself is enough to lobby wipe in most cases, and this method of attack is how most good Fogborn players get most of their kills in a match. Foggy Stare is just too unreliable, and it's outright unusable against certain survivors. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that Thunderwarp has a cooldown of 13 seconds. In that time, you can expend all your stamina, use Foggy Stare to quickly regenerate it all, then be topped up to do it all over again by the time Thunderwarp is off cooldown. Thunderwarp is really, really good, and the lobby wipe potential that Thunderwarp gives Fogborn is astronomical.
Do get a bit quirky at night, but do I blame?
Fogborn has a lot of other little quirks to talk about that make him a very strong monster. Firstly, if you attack while walking, you can't actually sprint again until the animation fully finishes. This can be pretty bad in a chase, as you might try and optimize your stamina consumption and end up just handicapping yourself immensely in the process. What the game doesn't tell you is as Fogborn, as long as you hold shift, you can actually stop moving. Your stamina won't regenerate, but you'll always be able to start sprinting even if you stop and you're attacking. This is really helpful to do in pretty much every chase you'll have as Fogborn. Secondly is the global noises Fogborn makes. Well, sort of global. I don't think the noise is made if you're too close to him. Fogborn has map-wide audio cues that help players determine what he's doing, primarily for when he exits Thunderwarp, when he successfully activates Foggy Stare on a player, as well as when the rage state actually ends. You can use these audio cues to help determine when and where it's safe to look up from the ground and be a lot more aware of your surroundings. The safest window is after the activation noise, wind down noise, and then only a few seconds after that. An often underrated part of Fogborn is also how quiet they are. While he does have idle noises, they're basically silent. This means that in some cases, you can sit around corners and wait for survivors to enter a certain area before attacking them. This works best on Gobble Run especially, as survivors are constantly going to have the audio and flashes of the yellow pellets in their face. Fogborn also genuinely does not really have any noticeably bad maps. Open maps make Foggy Stare more dangerous, more enclosed ones make it easier for Fogborn to get around and go on his Thunderwarp killing sprees. The funniest maps are the ones where you can spawn in, and due to survivor spawns and sightlines, just instantly get someone to trigger Foggy Stare before they're even able to orient themselves on the map. When it comes to the delay on Thunderwarp's ending, outrunning it is still often not an option in practice due to a variety of reasons we talked about so far in this video. One of the only things a survivor can do is juke it. Juking a Fogborn that's Thunderwarped on you isn't really easy due to the size of the hitbox as well as the speed of Fogborn, meaning he'll always be in range of you. Watch me chase this bacon hair. This guy was quite good at the game and had a lot of very solid jukes. What made these jukes so strong is that they were contextual with the environment. He's about to go through this door, boom, he suddenly changed directions. He makes me lose line of sight with the door, boom, he does something unpredictable. This guy knows what he's doing and knows how to properly juke a monster in a truly impactful way. When a lot of people say just juke, they don't actually really know what that means themselves and are mostly referring to the act of dodging one attack out in the open and then dying anyways. What this survivor was doing was juking in an actually impactful way, creating opportunities and distance for himself. And it would have been so much more effective if I wasn't playing Fogborn. Fogborn has no issue closing the gap in the first place, and it's really only a matter of time before Fogborn eventually catches a survivor he has his sights on. After losing a chase, all Fogborn needs to do is wait a few seconds and then Thunderwarp on top of them again. Most times you try and juke Fogborn, nothing will really happen, and you'll die anyways as long as the Fogborn is paying more attention than I was. This is probably the hardest part of the video for me to make, as Fogborn is a really strange monster to talk about and I don't really know where to begin. Earlier in the video, I proposed the idea that Fogborn is one of the few monsters I think people can reasonably call overpowered. I myself definitely think him to be a little bit overpowered. Foggy Stare is just too omnipresent of a threat on Survivor, and this is on top of how insane his chase potential is thanks to his stats and Thunderwarp. The main issue I'm having is I don't really like to suggest direct nerfs, and any sort of rework or suggestion I can reasonably give this guy ultimately is more of a nerf than anything. It doesn't help that Fogborn is a very one-dimensional character in a source material. There isn't much you can change or come up with for him, as everything the character is kind of just already in the game. I think my bigger issue is just the fact I never really have that much fun playing against Fogborn, and I don't really enjoy playing as him either. It's very much doing the same thing over and over against each and every survivor, and almost all of them fall victim to it instantly. Maybe 1 or 2 survivors require an extra Thunder Warp or 2, but that doesn't really change much at all. Then, playing against him, I've got to stare at the floor for a good half the game, and when he does Thunder Warp on me, I really have no agency as a survivor. My positioning on the map just doesn't matter, and if he's laggy enough, I might just be screwed fully due to server delay. As a survivor, a lot of playing against Fogborn feels like you're just hoping he'll mess up rather than you yourself will play well, if that makes any sense. It's part of the reason why juking is so effective against Fogborn. You don't really have much else to do against him in the first place. My biggest issue with Fogborn isn't specifically that he's so strong or whatever, he's just not a very fun monster to engage with, and I'm not sure what you could do to make him more fun to engage with. With all that said, I personally believe him to be one of the strongest and most consistent monsters to win with. All you really need to do is exercise a little patience with your stamina regeneration, and be ready for a survivor to suddenly start running backwards mid-chase. The skill required to play this monster is very, very low. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. What are your thoughts on Fogborn? You agree or disagree with anything I said in this video? Feel free to leave a comment. I just love to hear other people's perspective about monsters. With all that said, the commentary part of this video is over now. I'll leave you with a bit of gameplay. See ya.
If I chop you up in a meat grinder, and the only thing that comes out that's left of you is your eyeball, you're probably dead.